They literally kicked me out of the house, called me the shame of the Thorne legacy, and stole the inheritance I'd bled for, all with a smug little smile. When I walked into that Los Angeles courtroom, my mother's eyes were like knives, just waiting for me to break again. For 5 years, they buried me alive. They forged a will and threatened me into silence. They honestly thought I was there to beg for mercy, but they had no clue that I used that silence to find my grandfather's real will and set the perfect trap. This isn't just a story about losing an inheritance. This is about me peeling back the perfect facade of this prestigious American dream family. And the final piece of evidence I'm holding, it's going to make you hold your breath because it flips this entire courtroom on its head. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by the people you trusted most, hit subscribe right now. Join me on this journey to reclaim the truth and start healing from family trauma. Your action is proof of courage. Those words used to trap me in dark despair. But not today. Today, they'd see what their scorned daughter had become. The courtroom smelled of cold marble and stale, lifeless paperwork, judging every step. My heels clicked on the floor, steady, but they couldn't drown out the hurricane raging in my chest. I wanted everyone to hear the sheer weight of every step. Up front, my mother's lips were pressed tight, a half smile hiding a much bigger secret. My father let out a heavy sigh, loaded with disappointment, as if my presence was an insult he had to endure. My brother, Marcus, sneered, but his eyes darted around like a cornered animal. The judge paused, the gavel floating midair. His eyes widened slightly before he leaned toward the clerk. I knew, from the perspective of the reporter in the third row, I was just some scandal. They couldn't see the tattered remnants of the person they buried beneath this black suit. OMG, is that her? The whisper slid past, cold as a draft. Heads turned. The murmurs died down. All I could hear was my own heart thumping. I kept walking, each echoing step slow and deliberate. The file in my hand felt heavy, like carrying a lifetime of pain. The paper scraped my palm, a tiny reminder of those sleepless nights. 5 years of silence, packaged in these flimsy pages. I stood at the plaintiff's table, looking straight into my father's eyes. They were cold as marble. Then to Marcus, whose smug smile flickered when the light hit his face, revealing a flash of anxiety. My mother turned away, clutching her silk scarf, her eyes torn between that smile and genuine pain. They thought they had won. I placed the documents down. The sound of the paper hitting the table was dry and sharp, like a stab at their arrogance. I let the silence swallow their self-importance, second by agonizing second. My father was frozen, his gaze wavering. Marcus's sneer was thin, fragile, like glass about to shatter. My mother tightened her grip on the scarf, her eyes trembling, sensing the coming storm. The judge hadn't spoken yet. They figured I came here to save myself. They didn't see that they were the ones standing before the firing squad. The light from the window shimmered on the metal table edge, highlighting the stack of papers I'd prepared my whole adult life for. I let the silence stretch, taut like a guitar string. Then I raised my chin, my voice cutting and sharp. "Let's get this show on the road," I said. Marcus's smile froze solid. My mother bent her head, clutching the scarf. Could I really flip the script on them? And if I failed, what would be left of me? The Thornes were the perfect picture of the American dream. Victor Thorne, my father, a sharp-tongued California real estate mogul. Eleanor, my mother, the elegant lady of charity galas. Marcus, my brother, the golden heir who could do no wrong. But behind the glitz, the truth was riddled with cracks no one dared to look at. I used to run Thorne Properties with them when Dad was ailing. Every number matched. The reports were clean. I believed integrity and transparency were key to upholding our proud legacy. They called it coldness. When the market froze, I poured everything I had into saving the company and paying our people. During those lockdown nights, the smell of damp masks and staff texts about paychecks made my heart clench. I thought saving the company meant saving the family, just like Grandpa taught me on the docks of Lake Tahoe. He'd grip my hand, telling me about Thorne Properties built on integrity. I remember the feel of his rough, dry hand, but his grip was firm as an oath. The warm scent of pine smoke from the Lake Tahoe fireplace came to me then, a sharp contrast to the coldness I felt now. But my father constantly fought with Grandpa. Their angry voices echoed down the wooden hallway, insisting on risky deals that nearly tanked the company. Grandpa cut Dad out of the will. His eyes were firm as he signed, choosing me because I believed in the truth. That's why I became the target. Victor wanted Marcus to inherit so he could pull the strings, and I was the obstacle. Once the company was stable, I got fired. The official reason? Forging records. The truth? I was the thorn in their side. That night, the chandelier light reflected in Marcus's wine glass, shining on my mistake. My mother was slicing beef, the smell of meat mixed with the scraping of the knife against the plate, cutting me deep inside. "You were born to support, not to lead," she said, her voice gentle yet sharp, hesitant as if she was hiding something. Marcus chuckled, raising his glass. I laughed, the sound thin and dry as sandpaper, just enough to hide the tremble in my chest. My blood ran cold. I left, taking the financial records and the conviction that they would pay. They thought I vanished, but I was just waiting for them to dig their own hole. And I wasn't alone. A footstep in the hallway stopped me. In my small apartment, a brown package lay by the door. No sender, just my name scrawled on it. Inside was an old, wax-sealed envelope with Grandpa's handwriting. For her eyes only. My hands shook as I opened it. Every page bore his signature. Everything was left to me. Not Marcus, me. I couldn't move. When Grandpa passed, the will at the courthouse named Marcus. I'd been crushed, thinking he didn't trust me. But this was the truth they buried. My phone rang, cutting the silence. "Are you Isabella Thorne?" a hoarse voice asked. "I'm Daniel Reed. I worked with your grandfather's lawyer." The words caught in my throat. "He disappeared after refusing to alter the will. He believed your grandfather hid the real one. He probably trusted you'd find it," my pulse hammered. The world tilted. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a conspiracy. I tucked the will back into the envelope and wrote, "Patience is power." The Thornes didn't just steal an inheritance. They committed a crime and I wouldn't look the other way. Was this secret going to save me or throw me into more danger? Maybe both. Daniel met me at a Hollywood cafe where the rush of people meant no one was paying attention. He slid a scratched USB across the table. "From the lawyer's archive," he said. "Found it in a pile slated for destruction." The USB played a crackling sound, then an old, weak voice. Victor and Eleanor pressured me to forge the will. I'm scared of them, but I kept the original for Isabella. The cafe noise faded. The lawyer knew I'd be back. Daniel turned his laptop, opening a scanned copy of the will. "This signature is real," he said. "Copied from an old document." The familiar ink was shaky. They stole my grandpa's integrity. My anger flared, then hardened into clarity. You can fake a signature, but you can't fake integrity. Back home, I checked old bank statements. One entry, Grandpa and Isabella, joint account. But my name had been wiped from the online records. "Someone powerful made this happen," Daniel muttered. I took photos, saved the drive, and looked at him. "Now what?" "Now," I said. "We do this the right way. No noise, just the cold, hard truth." My coffee was ice cold when I left. A few weeks later, I visited Mrs. Langford. Her old house smelled of damp wood. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were sharp as a tack. I showed her the faded photo she'd sent me ages ago. Her voice shook but didn't break. "Your grandfather signed the will in his study? I saw your mother standing behind him." She refused to hand over the original photo. "I can't testify," she whispered, fear in her voice. I left my card. "If you change your mind, I'll be grateful." Her words planted a seed of hope, but the proof was still lacking. Have you ever held a secret, a photo, that could collapse an entire family conspiracy? And would you dare use it? Mrs. Langford reached into a drawer and pulled out an old album, its corners ragged, holding a lifetime of memories. On the final page was the evidence I never expected to find. My grandfather, holding a fountain pen, the lawyer standing next to him, and my mother, Eleanor, behind them, her eyes silently staring into space as if concealing an unspoken sin. I held my breath. Would you testify if the court requires it? I asked quietly. Child, she whispered, her voice shaking with fear. They destroyed all the originals. All I have is this picture, but I can't go to court. She shook her head, her sharp eyes now dim with anxiety. I put my business card on the table, saying softly, even if you change your mind at the last minute, I'll always be grateful. The clear proof was just beyond reach, like behind a pane of glass. My words were like a seed planted in her heart, but my evidence was still missing a piece. Would this one photo be enough to flip their entire scheme? And what would happen if they knew I had it? On the drive back, the sky was gray, cold as steel. Daniel Reed sat beside me, his voice a low murmur. If she still has that photo, they won't leave her alone. I saw what they did to Pine. His warning sent a chill down my spine. That night, I installed security cameras all over my apartment, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes in the dark. But when I opened my apartment door that evening, I smelled paint, then saw the lock had been forced. My knees buckled. Drawers were tossed everywhere. My computer screen was shattered. Shards of glass glittered under the light, like diamonds of betrayal. On the floor, the message was spray-painted in blood-red letters, silence or disappear. The smell of paint was overwhelming, mixed with the odor of fear. I knelt down. The overwhelming smell of paint, mixed with fear and the metallic tang of the forced open door. I touched the broken desktop. The razor-sharp feeling of glass splinters under my fingers was a chilling reminder of the threat. The camera caught a masked figure in black gloves, gliding through the living room like a ghost. My phone vibrated. A distorted voice whispered, "Stop, or you lose everything." I sank onto the cold floor, hands trembling, watching the video. The sharp sound of breaking glass in my headphones pierced my heart. I remembered my mother once hugging me, promising protection, but now only lies remained. Marcus, I thought. Only he'd be cruel enough to order this. But I gripped the phone tighter, my breath ragged, feeling a fire ignite in my chest. Who was behind this, and how much did they know? The phone vibrated again. A text from an unknown number. A legacy is not given, it is built. My grandfather's words. I called back, but only got the cold beep-beep of the dial tone. Was this a threat or a sliver of hope? I asked myself if I was trading my family for justice. Exhaustion weighed on my eyelids, but my resolve burned like a forge. They thought I'd break from the silence. They didn't know silence was my weapon, and I was waiting for the perfect moment. A text from Marcus came soon after, his tone falsely smooth. The family wanted a talk at the Lake Tahoe Lake House, where Grandpa taught me to sail. I knew it wasn't a peace offering. It was a trap. The house glowed with warm candlelight, the scent of pine wood mixed with rich, tart wine, Marcus's self-satisfaction. The atmosphere was heavy, like before a storm. My mother sat there, pearls glistening, her eyes darting past me, a flash of anguish, then turning away as if to hide her guilt. I have to do this, Eleanor thought silently, for Victor, and for our reputation. But looking at her daughter, her heart ached, seeing herself in Isabella's eyes. I am the worst mother. My father, in his black suit, hands clenched, looked at me like a superfluous chess piece. Marcus sipped his wine, a proud sneer on his lips, but his fingers twitched slightly. Seriously, you still think you can outsmart us, huh? He scoffed, his eyes showing a hint of worry. I didn't answer, my finger brushing the hidden recorder in the flower vase, cold as ice. My father's smile was thin as a knife blade. No need for a fight, Isabella. Sign this, and it all ends. The waiver for the inheritance lay on the table, its text a dagger to my pride. I pretended to consider it, then placed a photocopy of the real will and a USB with a fake recording next to it. I'll sue you to the end, I said, my voice falsely shaky. I looked at Marcus, making his smile vanish. Marcus looked at the USB, suspicious but self-satisfied, thinking his sister couldn't win. I got up and walked out, intentionally leaving the USB behind, baiting a hungry animal. They thought they had me, but they didn't know the real trap had just been activated. She's crazy, right, Dad? Marcus laughed loudly. My mother inhaled sharply, tightening her grip on the wine glass, her eyes troubled. My father took the USB, his voice cold. Calm down. Let's see what game she's playing. They played the USB, hearing the weak, fake voice. Victor chuckled. Gerald Pine has a deep southern drawl and a stutter. Who does this juvenile trick think she's fooling? He continued, full of himself. Real power is making people disappear without a trace. Pine is living well away with enough money to stay quiet. My father didn't trust me. He wanted Isabella to take over because she was like him. But Marcus is the right choice, and I made sure of that. My mother sighed in relief, but her eyes were vacant, her lips tightly pressed as if holding back a secret. She tried to smile. But in those eyes, I saw the cold despair of a mother forced to choose between reputation and her own blood. The recorder in the flower vase caught every word, every shaky breath. That night, Daniel called, his voice low. Victor tried to buy me off. He sent an audio file. My father's voice. We're just protecting our reputation. You'll be better off if you forget this. Partnering with prosecutor Sarah Vance ignited the fire. She said, I've been waiting for this day, Isabella. Now it's their turn. I knew the fight was no longer mine alone. Rain poured as I drove home, the streetlights blurring like fading memories. I turned into the cemetery, the ground soft under my heels. Grandpa's tombstone was worn, but the inscription was sharp. Integrity builds legacy. I placed a bouquet of white flowers on the stone and whispered, I'm not taking back property. I'm taking back the truth. The wind blew a piece of paper from my pocket. A legacy is not given, it is built. I suddenly understood. A message from my mother, a hidden encouragement torn between her loyalty and her conscience. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Tomorrow try to smile when they sentence you. I texted back, you taught me silence, but not how to use it for lies. Back home, I gathered the evidence. The real will, the photo, the Tahoe recording, the bribery file. Everything went into a leather briefcase. Each page felt like a bullet. I was no longer a daughter. I was Isabella Thorne, and I was ready for war. In the mirror, I saw a woman once destroyed, now reborn. I whispered, tomorrow they will hold their breath. But will this truth save both of us? The Los Angeles courthouse glared like a white flame, the cold lights cutting through the darkness. Camera flashes popped like machine gun fire. Reporters screamed the Thorne property's name, each shout a knife. I walked in, dressed in black, my hair tied back, my heels echoing on the marble, sharp as the heartbeat of a storm. My mother sat up straight, her lips sealed, her eyes wavering as if standing on a cliff edge. My father's jaw was locked, his face gray as limestone, his hands tightly clenched, wanting to crush the truth. Marcus leaned back, his smile thin, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. Their lawyer stood, a smug grin on his face. Ms. Thorne has nothing but lies, he growled, holding up papers like a weapon. A forged will. Illegal recordings. I looked straight into his eyes, my heart beating steady, cold as steel. Let the truth speak for itself, I replied, my voice sharp as a blade, making him flinch. The first recording played, Marcus's voice exploding like thunder. Dad, you handled that old lawyer, right? The room went dead silent. The audience held their breath. A few gasped. My mother jumped up, her voice shrill, the wooden chair scraping loudly. She didn't say, it's a fake, but screamed, enough! The judge's gavel hit hard, the sound sharp as a gunshot. Then the second file played, my father's voice cold as ice. We're just protecting our reputation. You'll be better off if you forget this. The murmuring erupted, like fire spreading through dry grass. My father bowed his head, hands clenched tight, eyes panicked. Marcus's sneer trembled like a shell about to crack. I closed my eyes, feeling the knife of justice cut through me. The last thread of faith had just snapped. Suddenly, the doors flew open, the hinges screaming like a shout. I turned, surprised and thrilled to see Mrs. Langford walk in, holding the original photo, her eyes blazing like fire. I can't be silent anymore, she said, her voice shaking but sharp as steel. Victor threatened me. I saw your grandfather sign the real will, and Eleanor was right there. She held up the photo. The light from the window shone through, highlighting my mother standing behind Grandpa, her eyes full of guilt. The audience whispered. Some leaned forward, eyes wide. Victor clenched his fists, knuckles turning white, afraid Isabella knew too much. Marcus recoiled, gripping the chair arm, his smile gone. The lawyer rushed forward, his face red, holding up a fake medical certificate. Mrs. Langford has cognitive decline, he yelled, his voice cracking. The judge narrowed his eyes, his gaze sharp, sweeping from the lawyer to me, then stopping at my mother. I turned to Mom, my heart racing, hope mixed with fear, wondering if she had the courage to tell the truth. My mother stood up abruptly, her voice choked, almost screaming, Enough! The room froze. All eyes were on her. The judge leaned forward, waiting. I sent the message to Isabella after the break-in, she said, tears streaming down her face, her hand shaking as she pointed at my father. I wanted her to keep going because I couldn't protect her from Victor. He destroyed the real will because my father didn't trust him. He wanted Marcus to inherit so he could manipulate the company. Her voice broke, her eyes vacant. I looked at Mom, her tears falling, but my heart felt a painful lightness, like dropping a heavy burden. My father slammed his hand hard onto the table, the dry sound startling the whole room. He looked down, his breathing heavy as if dragging a boulder. Then his shoulders slumped. Marcus's eyes were wide, unblinking, his hands gripping the chair so tightly his knuckles were white, trembling. The truth was close, but was I ready to face it? I stood, placing the stack of documents on the table. The sound of the paper rang like a death knell. Grandpa's letter was read aloud, the clerk's voice trembling. If she stands before you, she has carried a burden greater than anyone in this family. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting a cold, sharp golden streak, like the light of Lake Tahoe guiding me through the dark. The judge lowered his eyes, gripping the gavel, his gaze sweeping the room. The room was tight as a drumstring. No one knew which side the blade would cut. Would that blade cut through the bond of family too? Have you ever faced a moment where your whole family turned their backs, but the truth was on your side? The air in the courtroom was heavy, vibrating like before an earthquake. Marcus, face pale, screamed, Mom! Mom! But under the pressure of his mother's confession and the documents on the table, he bowed his head, his voice a fragmented murmur. I ordered someone to break into Isabella's apartment to spray paint the warning. I just wanted her to stop. The audience held their breath. A few covered their mouths, eyes wide. The judge narrowed his eyes, gripping the gavel, his cold stare sweeping past Marcus, then stopping at Victor. Victor looked at Isabella, his chest tightening as if choked. He was furious at the betrayal, but terrified that she had completely destroyed the legacy he built. The defendants, Victor Thorne and Marcus Thorne, will face additional prosecution for obstruction of justice, related to lawyer Pine and witness intimidation, the judge declared. His voice calm, like a knife cutting the air. The court recognizes Ms. Isabella Thorne's original will. Thorne properties and all assets will be returned to her. The defendants, Victor, Eleanor, and Marcus Thorne, will be handed over to the federal prosecutor for conspiracy, forgery, and obstruction of justice. I won. But what was the cost? The room erupted. Camera flashes popped like machine gun fire. Reporters yelled the Thorne property's name, each question a dagger. My mother sobbed, tears streaming down her face, clutching her crumpled silk scarf, her eyes vacant as if losing her child again. In that moment, I didn't see a defendant. I saw the mother who once loved me. Looking at her, I wanted to run and hold her, but my feet were cemented to the floor, trapped between justice and family. My father bowed his head, his shoulders slumped, his hands trembling as if he had no strength left, his eyes dull, staring into nothingness. Marcus leaned forward, face white as a sheet, his hands gripping the chair until his knuckles turned veiny and shaky. He whispered, You won, Isabella, but we lost everything. Looking at him, I saw the boy who used to play with me on the dock, now a stranger. I replied, my heart beating steady, my voice calm. I didn't take anything. I just took back what you destroyed. My mother wept. But could I forgive without forgetting? The gavel struck for the final time, the sound of wood echoing like a chime of release. I gathered the documents, the papers they tried to erase, which proved more resilient than their arrogance. The judge stepped down, his eyes softening, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said. I looked him straight in the eye. He already was. Time seemed to fold in on itself. My grandfather's gaze by the Lake Tahoe dock flashed back, where he taught me about integrity under the sparkling sun. The circle closed. Outside, the hallway was ablaze with flashbulbs. A reporter blocked me, yelling, "What did you destroy your family for?" The reporter watched Isabella, curious if she would break down or stand tall. I stopped, looked straight into the lens. The camera flashes flared, but they couldn't eclipse the sunlight I had just found. I closed my eyes for 1 second. "Justice doesn't destroy," I said. "It rebuilds." I knew they wanted a sensational answer. But my story ran deeper than that. Then I turned away. The door closed, the light click a gentle goodbye. But my mother's eyes made me pause. I walked out, but would the world forgive me? And could I forgive myself? The weeks that followed passed in an unusual quiet. The apartment was no longer threatened, but every dark corner still conjured the ghost of a memory. I spent hours just sitting, watching the city from the balcony, letting the loneliness and the victory interweave, slowly resolving. The noise of the courthouse faded, giving way to the city's peaceful breath. The twilight sun filtered through the window pane, like a gentle ribbon, a soft reminder of Lake Tahoe, where the truth never sinks. I stepped outside, the air fresh as if newly washed, the wind softly lifting my hair. The courthouse behind me was now a place of clarity. Every flash of light on the doorknob, once a weapon, was now a symbol of freedom. I inhaled deeply. The clean air swept the weight from my chest. For the first time in years, I didn't have to tense up, fight, or be constantly on guard. The feeling was so strange it was almost overwhelming. I realized I had forgotten what it felt like to be myself, not an enemy in my own home, not a disgrace to be forgotten. I drove back to Lake Tahoe, where it all began, as the day transitioned into sunset. The air was crisp and cold, the lake surface flat as a mirror, the scent of the water drifting past, like my grandfather's whisper. I sat on the wooden dock, the planks creaking softly, pulling Grandpa's letter from my pocket. The shaky handwriting carried the weight of integrity. I flicked the silver lighter. The flame flickered, watching the letter curl up. The ashes blew away with the wind, carrying the pain I had held onto for so long. I thought about my mother, the text she sent, her vacant eyes when she confessed. I picked up a pebble, cold in my palm, and dropped it into the water. The ripples spread out, gentle as a breath. Letting the stone go, I saw my mother in the ripples, and for the first time, I forgave without regret. That forgiveness didn't arrive like a flood, but gently like those ripples, spreading out and then dissolving. It didn't erase the scars, but it allowed me to stop holding on to the pain like a weapon. I cried. Tears that were no longer from resentment, but the liberation of the daughter I once was. They laughed when I walked into the courtroom, but I walked out free. A year later, I founded the Thorne Integrity and Legal Fund, supporting those who were wrongly accused. I didn't do it for fame. I did it because justice without compassion becomes cruelty. I remember the look in the eyes of a young woman the fund helped, when she knew she no longer had to fight alone. That moment meant more than any courtroom victory. It reminded me that the real legacy isn't in stone walls, but in the lives you touch. The press called my story the silent verdict. I let them. In an interview, the host asked, "Have you forgiven them?" I smiled, not for the camera, but for myself. "Forgiveness isn't about letting them go," I said. "It's about letting me live." Now I teach at the Los Angeles School of Law, in the city where my family once reigned. Chalk dust clings to my hand as I write on the board. Integrity builds legacy. A legacy is not given, it is built. Students look on silently, unaware that those words came from the man who once trusted me. Sunlight streams through the window, illuminating the words, like the light of Lake Tahoe guiding me through the dark. I pause, inhaling the sound of the wind through the trees, carrying the echo of water hitting the dock. When the class ends, I linger, watching the sun slide across the floor, reflected on the glass like a vibrant heartbeat. I close my eyes. The silence is no longer empty. It is full, peaceful, and forgiven. I reclaimed the legacy, but I didn't demand the assets. I demanded the truth and the integrity my family had lost. If you also believe that no one should fight for what's right alone, hit subscribe right now. Join us in spreading stories of courage and forgiveness to the thousands of people betrayed. The next story will teach you how to heal family wounds. After all this, can you forgive the people who buried you alive? Let me know in the comments below.